This is a morning show here on Signature TV. It's 9:04 a.m. on this fine Monday, the 26th of May, 2025. Hope you're good. Hope you're preparing for the 2 years administrations, the midterm that like they call it in other climes. But of course, we're looking at some of these issues as it affects every single person. Today's papers didn't really look good, given the amount of monies that have been saved, some from subsidy, and not reflecting on the lives of the common man. Anyways, we'll get into that shortly. But again, let's talk about something that is quite important, more important in fact, because it centers on employment and unemployment. We're talking vocational training. How much of vocational training have been infused in our curricula? Given that in our climate we have the highest number of unemployment, and if we have harnessed the strengths of vocational studies and trainings, it would have been a lot better. Our students are trained mainly to become job seekers, not job creators, but that's where we are right now. But we're going to be expanding on that discussion as it relates to our system, because we have someone who would expand largely, because he is a professor of business and management and development and a senior lecturer at the ESU Business School, the person of Professor Vincent Onodugo. Good to have you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Just for the record purposes, I'm a professor of management at University of Nigeria, Eno campus.
Okay.
I also teach at ESU Business School, running at ESU Business School.
Perfect.
Just to put it in context.
Fantastic.
It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning.
Pleasure is mine. Why has it become very difficult to infuse vocational training on our curriculum, given that we know that is the path to, killing unemployment in our system?
You must look at the history of our educational system. The current educational system we run is presently structured and both in content and in form. We inherited from the British colonial masters, and at the time education was mainly to prepare people for public service. I would have gone back to what is actually education. What is it all about? Education prepares people to conquer its environment and make it livable and productive and useful for everybody. That's the essence of education. And broad education, targets three key main domains: the cognitive, the intellectual, that's the cognitive, the cognition. Then you talk about the affective, the character, and then talk about the psychomotor, the vocation, the skills, the competencies, and all that. The British education prepared people, which we inherited largely, prepared people for certificates for the public service. So it was mainly, targeted at the cognition, the intellectual aspect of it, and it was bereft of the basic character, ethical, side of it. Also bereft of the psychomotor domain, and it has evolved over the period. And then, ordinarily, a functional education should prepare people vis-a-vis its environment, and the environment keeps changing with time. The educational system we inherited from the British colonial masters didn't change dramatically or in tandem with the changes in the environment. So you're preparing people to conquer its environment, and the skills you are giving to them are at variance with the requirements of the industry. And that's where that's the disconnect. So the graduates we are putting out from our educational system have skills that are at variance with what is required in the industry. Now, because of this disconnect, that's why we have, like you rightly mentioned, preparing people who are looking for jobs, non-existent job, the public sector. The public sector is now saturated, cannot employ more young people. So that's why youth unemployment is at the region of 50-something%. Headline unemployment is about 33.9 as a last count. But the youth unemployment is about 50-something%. And then when you have this large quantum of young people unemployed, it gives opportunity for all the things that we're not comfortable with. Kidnapping for ransom, or kind of yahoo, all kinds of moral, because they want to survive. and they are able-bodied. And the first law of nature is preservation, to preserve. We're not excusing some of the things they've done, but you see a system that produced them to look for non-existent jobs instead of creating jobs. That's where you come in. So now the question is, why do we have a system like that? The educational institution look to pour funding. The lecturers, the system cannot give what it does not have. Most of the lecturers needed to be updated, their skills needed to be updated. And they needed to also have a regular handshake with industry to know what industry requirements are, so that they can build people and they train themselves, retrain themselves, update their skills and competencies to train people that be able to meet the requirements of the industry. The lack of funding, proper funding of the education system. If you want to owe, for instance, if the government wants to owe salaries, the first set of people that salaries will owe are the teachers. Look at the funding. If you look at budget allocation, defense will have it, works. All those, they will have the good chunk of the budgetary allocation. So when you underfund the sector that should produce the major requirements. By the way, there was a study conducted in 2010 called Next Generation Project. It has a report, if you go online, it's a Next Generation Project 2010 report. That report said, or says, because it's still there, the report says that by the year 2030, Nigeria will be the nation with the highest number of young people. So the conclusion of that report is that youths, not oil, is Nigerians' greatest assets. And if you look at our demography, for instance, young people constitute the bulk of our population. In fact, 70% of our population are young people. And if normally we use 200 million, but now as at last month, it's about 230-something million people. So it means that you have close to 90 million people as, close to 160 million people as, of the population are young people. So if we have 50-something% of young people unemployed, you're dealing with close to 80 to 90 million young people unemployed. Full able young people and their idle hands. Of course, you know that idle hands becomes a very veritable instrument in the hands of the devil to do all kinds of mayhem. So that's the problem. So the problem, why is it difficult? Poor funding. Teachers can only give what they have. They need to be exposed to proper training and retraining to be able to acquire the industry. And they have to interface regularly. There's a disconnect. The ivory tower kind of disposition that the institutions that's sitting on an ivory tower, isolated from the society, it's not supposed to be so. Education has to be interacting with the environment, in society, with industry. The industry want to train people, they won't get the university environment. So there's a disconnect between the industry and in the institutions that train people for the industry. And because of that disconnect, sometimes the institutions don't know, the lecturers, the faculty members, the researchers don't know the needs of the industry because there's a lack of proper handshake. For if there's a proper handshake between the industry and the education institutions, they will know their problems, their needs regularly, and then be able to retrain themselves if they have the proper funding, train themselves, recruit people who have those competencies to be able to inculcate this young people, so that by the time they come out, they become well-rounded individual, good in their head, cognition, good in their hearts, behavior, and the good in their hands, skills. So you can see the consequences are there. Let me not preempt your questions.
I mean, I don't
want to press your questions, but that's be my preliminary submission.
There are fantastic submissions that you have just made. There are several things at the same time that you mentioned that I'm trying to put my hands on, but I'll come to that. But there's a traditional way that has been in existence that Igbos have practiced for so long, which is the Igbo apprenticeship system, which has worked largely, even though in a crude manner. Do you think that can be harnessed into our educational sector or modernized in order for us to be able to, inculcate that for some sort of growth in our system?
Okay. As we speak now, I'm leading a research team powered by the SU Business School on this subject. Trying to leverage on time-honored apprenticeship model to be able to revitalize our economy. So we're now looking at why do we have unemployment? Why are young people not taking advantage or leveraging on this time-honored model that saw us recover from the losses our people encountered during the war period, just post-war period. Within 1970, 71 to now, just a few years afterwards, they bounced back. The key that helped them to do that bouncing back is essentially the apprenticeship model, where a trained professional, a trained trader, commercial, whether artisans, whatever skills, tailoring, whatever, mechanic, and all of those things, will hire young school leavers or even dropouts. Once they get them, they train them on a particular skill, so use them for a period. And within the period, you expose them to the market dynamics, the interface with the customers, you understand the trade secrets and all the competencies required. And within those periods, you save part of their labor. And there are two, the Eba boy side and the Emuahia side. Eba boy is that you're drill an apprentice. You live with your master, understudy your master, live with him, offer. So you're living with him for the period, after which, maybe 4 or 5 years, he will now settle you and empower you to stay on your own. The aim here is that maybe you come from your parents' place or you live alone and you want to learn the trade. Sometimes you are required to pay. For the most part, you are supposed to pay if it's aim here. But if it's a boy, you're settled at the end of the period. That's the model. And we're now looking, the research we're undertaking, we undertook, we were trying to look at why our young people not subscribing to this very time-honored model. Even in other climes, in Harvard, in other institutions, they are beginning to study this model that become the greatest innovation hub worldwide, globally. So they begin to look at this. And so we're now looking at how can we replicate this model in other professional areas. But the question is, why are young people not subscribing to this? Sometimes, this certificate-based education that we're doing, we are much interested in title rather than functionality, your content, what you can produce to the table. And I keep telling anybody who cares to hear, the society has long evolved. We have moved away from certificate-based society to competence-based society. Worldwide, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, most of these people who engineered or conceived or innovated or brought to the table something that changed the entire world, most of them were dropouts. Nobody asks you, what did you study? What can you bring to the table? That's where the society has come into. So, but our people, I'm a graduate, how can I become an apprentice? So that's one of the reasons. Two, so it was largely, the apprenticeship model was largely practiced within the commercial area. That was what was in the vogue at the time, commercial area, artisan area, those petty trading and all of those. What we are now looking at is that, can we escalate this to professional areas, law, engineering, medicine, and so on and so forth? There's some form of tutelage that you could call an apprenticeship model, but not structured like we have it in the apprenticeship, Igbo apprenticeship scheme model. You have a typical graduate of medicine, for instance. You are taken in as a resident, working with under a consultant for a period of time, but you take exams and all of those things. The rules is public sector driven, and they are paid salaries and so on and so forth. And if you look at it, if you look at that sector critically, those are the people who make more noise than even their masters training them. So you can see that they are apprentices, but also they are masters in their own little ways, formed into a association NAD, and they make a lot of. You have in profession, in law profession, you also have people go. But if it is structured, intentionally structured, a mentor-mentee relationship called apprenticeship. You recruit people in your professional areas, have a structured relationship, train them for a period of time, sort them out. You can open up a clinic for them. You can open up a chamber for them. You can open up a consultancy for them. That way you replicate your skills and get them off the streets, and they learn, that if that is the trade. So that's what we're looking at. But reasons why young people, values also changed. Because apprenticeship you have to take time. Evolve, it takes time for you to acquire the skills and so on. Some people, our people now society has unwittingly reinforced make money quick syndrome, value. It was not there before. So because of it, instead of, and we have also exalted materialism over and above character and value system, honesty. So that's why even in the village, people will not marry you if you're poor, even though they see your path, your trajectory that you're going to, they will not give you, chieftaincy. They will not confer on you chieftaincy titles if you do not show signs of throwing around wealth immediately. So now you see people who you don't know the antecedents, they don't know the school they attended, you don't know how they make money, and they are being encouraged by society, by either awards. Even young youth organizations were conferring award on so. What has he done? What is his CV? And then, of course, the polity has even worsened the situation. Political appointments are not based on clear skills, competencies, and your contributions in the past. Your antecedents are not part of it. Loyalty over and above. Okay, look at what is happening in some of the states where protegees are now beginning to want to carve the decision. Why did you have to choose somebody who has no pedigree? Because you want to use the person as a lackey. And when he gets there and the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, the guy comes up and he wants to call his shot. So you understand what I'm saying? So we're culpable, all collectively culpable, mutually culpable. Society and the individuals there. We reinforce, society encourages what they reward. So when we reward materialism that has no clear path, values, without values, even appointments across board, across various spectrum of society, appointments are not based on clear trajectory, clear value system, clear competencies. What are you bringing to the table? So you pick people who you want to. The young people will want to become more lackeys, more of sycophants, team boosts, if you like, because that's what society rewards. That's what people reward. So you encourage what you reward, and that's where we are now. So young people are no more patient enough to undergo the proper tutelage. They need to go under the apprenticeship model. So they'll be able to, in the 5 years' time, they want to make it in here and now. And then Japan. That's why a lot of people are moving. They're they can swim. If they can turn themselves into a fish and find themselves in Spain, they will want to do it. That's the society we find ourselves in. So it's a potpourri, if you like, of factors that brought us to where we are.
All right. We're headed for a short break. When we get back, we'll continue this conversation. Just stay with us.
With a population of about 36 million people, the Southeast is awash with stories. Every day on Southeast News, we tell the peculiar story of the Southeast and her people.
Our Southeast should be the Silicon Valley of Nigeria.
Their successes, achievements, and daily challenges. Do you have a Southeast story to share? Community achievements and challenges, completed and uncompleted projects, bad roads, water scarcity, erosion, flooding, insecurity, or even disagreements? Bring it on to Southeast News. On Southeast News, no story is too big or too small. Southeast News. Let's tell our story. Showing on Signature TV every weekday at 4 p.m. WAT, 1600 hours GMT.
Welcome back. This is Signature Morning on Signature TV, and we've been having some interesting discussions with Professor Vincent Onodugo. As a professor of business management and development in UNN, and of course a senior lecturer at Essex Business School, giving us an insight into the importance of vocational studies and vocational training in our development. Earlier you were speaking about the fact that our educational system that we inherited from the British is part of the reasons why, we have these issues, that education then was also just basically about training people to work at the civil service. Is it the same kind of education that the British have?
Well, I will not be able to say. Of course, they cannot. Over time, like I said, education should interface with the environment. Education prepares people to conquer the environment, to subdue the environment. So what dictates the kind of model you run is the changes, the dynamics of the environment. Because over the years, the environment has changed tremendously. We now have a specter of what we call a globalization, fostered on the world by the advancement in information technology. You can see you use AI to Google, over time now we will stop interviewing people. So once we mention your name, Prof. Vincent Onodugo, University of Nigeria is my base. I lecture in a business school, but I'm also lecturing in the UNM business school. UNM has a business school too. So I lecture in both schools. Okay. So you just Google my name, and they will tell you much more than I can even talk about myself. They collate all the information. So that's the world. The world has been shrunk into a global village, and then COVID-19 and the aftermath of COVID-19 has migrated almost most systems from analog to digital. So a dynamic educational system should restructure itself. If the British still run that kind of education, they become irrelevant. People will not go there to study. So they have to rejig itself, because it's a more interactive system, more responsive system. They have long changed that they are modeled.
And Nigerians refuse to change us.
Because of the things I tell you about. One, we didn't value education. If I were to be in the street, we should even play less. Our still emphasis is still on oil. While the major resource we have are young people. The major Nigerian game changer are the human resources where we have. If you go to the American demography as we speak, Nigerians are the most educated segment in the entire Nigerian Americans are the most educated segment in the entire American demography. So you can recruit raw materials, build health institutions. It is known that Nigerians medical practitioners are the ones that are driving the British, European, and even American system, health system. So why can't we produce these things and send them there? Gone are the days where we're talking about there's an osmosis. It's no longer, there's nothing like brain drain and all of those things. It's osmosis, movements of skilled, competent people from a place where they are lowly paid and harassed and intimidated by the environment or whatever. They are now moving to a place where they are well paid, respected, and called resource. That's the movement that is come to. So there's an osmosis. So because of that osmosis, you must understand the dynamics. Trained, become a human resource producing, headquarters of the whole world. Send them. That's what Indians have done to be able to reverse their or fast track their development quest for development. What did he? So take these people there. They will learn, raise, make money, send remittances for us to be able to keep changing our distance. And by the time they get to a certain point, when they're settled in, they can come back here and bring part of the human and financial resources to be able to change our economy. But it should be planned, orchestrated, organized. At the moment, we don't have that level of coordinated planning. And then the resources are not being devoted to it. Where people are more interested, if you are made a minister of course, in the last successive regimes, the president has become the minister of petroleum resources. That tells you where our hearts are. Because where our resources are, that's where our hearts are usually, will be. So the truth is that over time, we have prioritized oil as a game changer, rather than looking at resources, human resources that are renewable. So that's the issue. So I believe that their system must have changed a lot. Otherwise, they become irrelevant. People will not be going to UK, but a lot of people are going to UK because their curriculum have changed to be able to train people for the global economy.
Right. Do you think there's a role that the private sector can play in all of this? Because I also think that the government, given the quantum of issues that they have, engaging the private sector would be of immense benefit.
Oh, yes. Organized, what the government should do is not to only intervene. Government should clearly start taking the back seat, do policy, create environment, and allow the private sector to play. Now, the private sector, for the most part, and it is the private sector, some of our construction firms have been hiring people from overseas, Indians, Chinese, and so on and so forth. You see them all over the place, taking the jobs that our people could easily do. One, let us patronize our own. Let us, even our institutions, some of the, like in the medical field, the pharmaceutical field, some of these medicines, I use the word medicines, not drugs. Some of these medicines, you can endure a chair, research chair, to our universities. Go to the pharmacy department and say, look, we want a cure for malaria, for instance. It's common. Find malaria. We want cure for tuberculosis. Do research. Find those distance. Once you get it, we must produce it. But because we do not look at Dangote is crying. Innocent has vehicles, made in Nigeria, but people prefer Prado and all of those things. We must begin to patronize our own locally. Our organized private sector should interface with the educational institutions so that they'll be able to produce research, produce prototypes, initiate, conceive ideas, products, which they can mass produce. That handshake. So instead of getting it from overseas, you can sponsor local scientists, local researchers to be able to produce some of these templates. When they produce the prototype, you can then mass produce and sell. So that kind of symbiotic relationship needs to exist between, and government needs to facilitate it. For instance, if for instance Pfizer, assuming that Pfizer is still there, assuming Pfizer wants the University of Nigeria pharmacy department to be able to produce drug on a particular area, Pfizer will endorse $10 million grant. Government can complement it, 10 million, 10 million. And they encourage UNN that must have, after competitive bidding from university, proposals and all of those things, they look at it, which one gets it. When you produce the prototype, it give you these things, you will take it, the Pfizer will now take it, mass produce it and sell. By so doing, you are getting these people up on stream, the equipment, the skills, competencies, and they begin to interact with the industry to know their needs. Their students in the process of research would have also learned how these things are done, to update with the equipment, current equipment. Some of our health professionals, when they go overseas, they get lost in the few months of their stay in overseas because they will see equipment they have not seen, not let alone talking about manipulating. So that's the problem. Poor funding, and then of course not incentivizing our scholars and our researchers has also been the challenge for the most part. So organized private sector has a lot to do. I keep telling them, why would you train people in my field? Why would you go and hire foreigners to train people in my field? We have the competencies, we have the faculty members to train people from any angle you want to look at it. So why would you go outside like that? So so we must also be altruistic. We must also be nationalistic in our approach and all of those things. Sometimes we do it even in the sports. Christian Chuku, you go and hire people who are outside. And when we have local people, of course, we have a lot of stories said about it. Sometimes they hire people they can share the salaries with and all of those things. But that's by the way. So it's a whole lot. There's a whole lot of cobweb of issues that hinder some of these developments.
Right. Do you think digital skills also important in all of these vocational trainings? We've seen the rise of AI, and it does look like AI is not going to go away anytime soon. We're just going to see improvements. Do you think it's important that is also inculcated in this vocational skill that we're talking about?
You see, I had to say this, that if you are computer illiterate, you are globally an illiterate citizen. That's the truth. I was once in I think it's George Bush International Airport in Texas. You will be the one to check yourself in. You won't see any officer. Most in other clients, you won't see anybody interact with. You have to check yourself in, get your boarding pass, and move. So if you are not ICT literate, of course, financial transactions now. People can initially when people had I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to be this part of this gamble. They will steal my money and all of those things. But you can't continue in that trajectory now. You don't see a physical cash anywhere. So it's transfer. If I look at your purse now, like my purse now, you won't see any cash. You buy something, you use your ATM. So you just must. So a baseline. In fact, in primary school, not even in secondary school, and that's what he must give it to His Excellency Dr. Peter Mba of Enugu State. He must give it to him. He's building smart schools. He's seeing tomorrow. He's bringing tomorrow forward, as it were. He must just give it to him. So smart schools from primary school, you start fiddling with this. Overseas, I work for international organizations. I work for a lot of DFID, USAID, all of those that I work for. They take it for granted that you have the basic tools to work with, which is computer. Because AI, artificial intelligence, is to configure machines to behave and act like human beings. That's what artificial intelligence is. So the baseline for this thing is to digitize, to move away from analog to digital, and this is compulsory. Even in UNN, in almost of the schools, you find that people are now migrating. You cannot help but, even in security alone, some of our students used to come from wherever, but we use online to be able to facilitate them. And that's the global trend. So the bottom line is that the baseline is that everybody must acquire skills, ICT skills, so that you'll be able to move. Then AI is a specialty. When you get to Python engineering, you configure robots, configure machines to be able to behave. But it is still human beings that will feed those AI with the contents of what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So, but the baseline is that everybody should acquire the basic ICT skills to be functional.
So, but much more than that, this baseline is actually somewhat integrated in different departments. For instance, if you are looking at ICT skills as it relates to making money online, it's different from developing an ICT skill that is related to medicine.
Of course, yes.
So
yes, but you see the baseline is, you see diagnostics now. There's no more. It's gone are the days when people, you don't do rule of the thumb like before. No, you just use the even examination. That's what they call it. Is it endoscopy or so? They put just something in your stomach, this is, and you see yourself. Even the patient will see alongside with the consultants and the medical doctors. You see your stomach the way it is, like the television. You see clearly. You see the thing, they're telling you, look at it, look at what we're looking at. If we operate on this, it will affect this, it will affect this. So we'll shrink it before. You will see it. ICT skills. If you don't know how to manipulate it to open up the place, you will be struggling. And because of that machine, we still go overseas, we still go to UI. You see some few areas, cancer, or, oncology treatments are still here, dots here and there, nephrology, those specialties. We need to make these things, fund our sectors. There's human development sectors. We want to fund health, education. These are the key, areas that shape the quality of your human development capital and so on. So it's an area we need to invest more on. Equipment, training our doctors, because you don't get them, you don't get those machines, people must be trained how to use them, and so on and so forth. That's why government should stop running away. It's not good news that our people, our leaders are still running up and down, going overseas to go and get Medicare. When they get there, it's most of the people who train them there are Nigerians. Even COVID drugs, the major pioneer, they're Nigerian. And we've made breakthroughs all over the place. So why can't we use our resources and devote it to where it matters most and all that? So These are the things there. So the basic line is that the skills, ICT skills or digital skills or AI skills for all these sectors differ. But the baseline for all those things is that ICT skills. You must know how to manage computer, use internet and all that. That's all.
So, if you want to put this discussion into perspective, there is a stigma that comes with blue-collar jobs. And, you know, because of the part of the world that we are in right now, everybody's looking for a place where they would employ them. How do we play down on that and project more vocational studies?
Let me tell you, the stigma is given away. It's a colonial mentality thing.
We've been away from colonial mentality for 60 years now.
Let me tell you, imperialism has a way. It gets into your mind. We used to, there are places where you wear this. People begin to look at you. You should wear a tie, be formal and all that. So what do you mean by formality? Who defines what is formal? Why shouldn't I wear what I'm comfortable with? You understand what I'm saying? So it's a mind thing. It's a mindset thing. So the blue collar job has been, let me tell you, they make a lot of money. And unfortunately, our society values money, materials, rather than all the, so they're throwing away some of those things. So people now feel free. So why vocational, for instance, the person those people who do POP, the amount of money they will make will pay a professor. Just in 2 buildings. The amount of money they make in 2-3 buildings will pay a professor for per annum. So why? Society is clearly. So there's no more, you don't even need to do campaign on that one. Don't bother yourself with that one. Because people have, young men, don't bother with those things. And I tell people when I teach on money, maybe as opportunity to present yourself will come and talk. I teach on vocations, on callings and professions. I can tell you this for free. There's money everywhere. Do you know the caterers? They can run one wedding, just one wedding. So they can run even one burial outing, and they make millions. Caterers. Just I know how to cook food. There's money everywhere. A professor, how much is my salary as a professor? Strictly on the salary. Some of these people on in a big wedding or big occasion, some of these caterers can make that money in one outing. So you don't need to blue collar, white collar distance. These are just, for me, these collaborations are just colonial mentality. And people are now using modern, people who make these clothes. You know how much they make clothes now? Very good. So those things have been thrown overboard. And they're modernizing it. If you come to the office, most of the offices, most of them have upgraded the equipment. So that stigma, whatever, is no more there. And that's why most of them left those things. What we need to escalate, the apprenticeship model, we need to escalate it from where it started, trade, commerce, and so on and so forth. We need to escalate it to other professional areas. Like tailoring. Some call it seamstress, depending on what you're calling it. It's a moved fashion designer. People call it, the names have changed because of the model, the style, fashion, just like every other profession. It keeps changing, but because the equipment and the sophistry and the earning power has changed over the period. In the time past, when we were much younger, there was nothing like a caterer. Just hire local women for local instance. People who have the skills, they give them what their pay is, the food they eat there. But over time, this thing has been monetized and made a profession. The area that both international organizations and even the federal government have been working on, and that's been looking like it's a difficult thing to do, is the agriculture. They want to make farmers to be wealthy. But I think we're not focusing properly. There must be something gap somewhere, but it's a story for another day. We have not been able to make farmers wealthy. So that if you go to Faculty of Agriculture, most of them you have to do something to keep students there. They don't see future in farming. In other climes, to be a farmer, you're very wealthy, you're a millionaire, you're a billionaire. Because government sponsors. Because food security is the key. If you have to eat food before you can even think AI, and so on and so forth. But in our case, it's not so. We have not appreciated what is fundamental, what is substructure, before we talk about superstructure. So we need to reorientate ourselves and prioritize what we need to prioritize, and so on and so forth. There are some sectors, when you prioritize them, I've had meetings overseas. Some of them don't pray the way they will pray. because the food. In fact, I've had the training. There was a training we went for 26 in Hagar, in Maui, in America, for 26 days. Light doesn't blink. Food, 3 square meal every day. So you don't pay for those things. They come like come. It's like just like the day comes. So because they have met the basic needs, and that's why they don't struggle. They have time to begin to do gay and all of those things. You know why those things are not? If somebody was not eating food here, what time does he have to go? You know, that's why what is bothering them are those things. But we are still at the existential level, survival level, basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing. That's where we are. We've not even gone half of it. And that's why the society is replete with all kinds of things. Even people who are in the bush, staying there to even collect ransom, you can't even enjoy it. Because, I mean, it doesn't make sense. And all that. So, I think we just need to look at that nation. Our leaders come from the top. They've not... If you get people, somebody who is down to earth, who have built over the period, who understand the society, set the priorities right, give priority to these things. When we build the basics, we can now begin to go into the sophistry. We don't talk about AI in Nigeria when you have almost 90 million people, young people, are idle. I mean, train them on entrepreneurship. Let them see this model. Let them get to eat food. When they eat food, then you can now move it beyond that point.
Interesting discussions. I mean, you mentioned earlier that we lack a lot of investment in our young people, and that the greatest resource out of Nigeria is our youth population, not the so-called oil that we have. But why has it been very difficult for government to look at this as a great resource? If you look at even the budget in itself, the amount of monies that are budgeted for youth development, even education, as it were, it's a far cry from what has been invested in places like security. In fact, I was reading on a page one day, we have over 17 trillion naira invested in security since 2015, and up until this moment, we're still having security problems. So you wonder, really, the priorities are really not what should be.
It's difficult to say, but truth be told, we have politicians, we do not have elder statesmen. Politicians look at the next election, elder statesmen look at the next generation. If we think back and get our leaders, if we continue the way we're continuing, where do we get our society to? They will stop the things they're doing. Most of them, the budgetary allocations, the governance for them is what they can get. Build fiefdom, build hegemony, recyclocile maintenance hold on power. So they won't even want to train these young people for them to be independent. Because empowering people is to make them independent. They don't want. Unfortunately, I'm saying this thing with deep sense of responsibility. I've worked with some of these people. There are a few exceptions here and there, but the bulk of the people who want to train young people for them to be independent. Otherwise, they won't see lackeys around them.
Why is that?
I want to be the only cock crew.
All the whole leaders out of Nigeria wants to do that?
No. I said there could be exceptions, but okay, I don't know whether you've heard this. It is better for the mouth that have been sucking breasts or taking milk to continue rather than bring many more mouths to go. Instead of the mouth that have been taking milk to stop taking milk, let us deny the one that hasn't tasted it from tasting it in the first instance. I don't know whether you've heard it. Okay, why? If they really want to develop society, look at their budget allocation. Where do they put money more? Okay, you said 17 trillion over the years on defense. Where is security? Where are the equipments they bought with it? They siphon these things. What it takes to build a kilometer road in Nigeria, will build about 100 kilometers or 50 kilometers elsewhere. So for investments, 1 billion invested in road infrastructure across board. There could be exceptions here and there. 1 billion invested. Only 300 million. I'm being magnanimous. gets into the real thing. 700 million is padded, and at various levels. Nobody is excused, both public servants, politicians, and everybody alike. Even the sycophants around them. The people that we even link them to get the contract and so on. There's a cobweb. We need to sit down and tell ourselves the truth. Our children are there languishing. Okay, tomorrow and all that. How many young people have been given access to the political platform to be able to ventilate? Nnamdi Azikiwe, Gowon, most of them operated in their late 20s, early 30s, and so on and so forth. Where are our young people? We are begging people like Atiku, in his who is touching distance to 80, to leave the scene for young people to come who have energy, and so on and so forth. So you can see the thing. So are you thinking that? Are you thinking this? These are politicians who just want to. Okay, if it is the thing that you want to just answer the president, when you become a president, prepare ground for young people to take over. Nelson Mandela took 110 and retired. So it's a whole lot. I don't know what, and I've asked myself, what do they do with the monies they are piling up? What are they doing with the money? Most of these people will not go hungry. Even if they eat 1 million every day, they can go hungry. So why are you struggling to continue? So sometimes it becomes, become addicted to it, become a primitive sense of accumulation, unnecessary. So I think we just need to, if you can pray, we need to pray to ask God to send us elder statesmen, people who think about tomorrow, and not thinking about within the next election.
Fantastic. Professor Vincent Onodugo has opened our eyes to a whole lot this morning. Many thanks for your time, sir.
It's my pleasure.
We truly appreciate your insights. It's rewarding and it's refreshing. Thank you again.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. I want to appreciate every one of you being part of the program this morning.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.